All right, welcome back to the AfterHours podcast. I'm your host, Francisco. Co-host today, I have Joey Prohaska, and we have their guest. It is Chris Fredrickon from Traverse City Whiskey Co. What's going on, Chris?
Hey guys, happy evening.
Yeah, no, for sure. And we were blessed to have Aaron, who is one of your PR managers. He was gracious enough to send us over some samples. So throughout the show, we're going to be trying a variety of different products produced by Traverse City Whiskey Co. And we're super excited. So first, Chris, let's hear a little bit about your background. How'd you get into the industry?
The story about how I got into the industry was actually kind of by chance, you could say. Two things happened at about the same time, back around 2011, 2012. In 2011, my father, James, who's a third generation cherry farmer from Traverse City, he was born and raised here and has been farming his entire life. We were out at our family's farm and organizing one of our storage facilities. We stumbled across a set of my great-grandfather's distilling patents that he had patented during the U.S. Prohibition. I, at the time, would have classified myself as an enthusiast. I had already started kind of my own bourbon club with a couple buddies from around the world, and we would just buy really nice bottles. You know, we were by no means well-to-do at the time, but we would buy these really nice bottles and then split the cost between 8 guys. So I was really into it. And then I stumbled across these distilling patents and was like, how did nobody in the family tell me that my great-grandfather was a closet distiller and a chemical engineer who had patented techniques for distilling? It was like the whole family knew it, but didn't share anything about it. I shared these patents with my current business partners, Jared and Moti. Over a few whiskeys one night, we birthed an idea called Traverse City Whiskey. And this was kind of our foray into the industry.
Very cool. Yeah. So do you know how long those patents were untouched for?
Decades. And actually probably about a generation and a half. And what's interesting is through the USPTO, we learned this after the fact, but through the USPTO, you can track the life cycle of the patents. And it's neat because the patent numbers actually trace through different hands over the course of 30 or 40 years. And so they were bought, sold, traded amongst different breweries and distilleries.
Very cool. And so when did you first start distilling?
As we all know, whiskey has to age. And the coincidental part about when I found these patents and when we birthed this idea, it coincided with a random relationship that my business partner had. And we had this opportunity at the time as we were, hunting the market to figure out what whiskey, what our flavor profile would be. And we really resonated with the MGP 75% corn, 21% rye, 4% malted barley flavor profile. And it was just that extreme versatility, the warm vanilla, that light spice from the rye that as we just poured this dram, neat, you can enjoy it neat. And you can also drop it into a cocktail. It was just wildly versatile. So we somehow had this opportunity to buy 20 barrels back in 2012. And this was at a time when it just, wasn't really a big deal for somebody. Like, the barrels were available. Those barrels would never be available today. We started with 20 barrels. We were all self-funded. So we put all of our savings into a pot and bought the barrels. We sold our first bottle July 7th of 2012 at a local party store here in Traverse City. And from there, the sales engine for Traverse City Whiskey just started churning. And by the end of the year, we realized that we were onto something. Quit our full-time jobs. I was in management consulting at the time, and my business partners were practicing attorneys. And we thought, enough of the corporate grind. We really need to pursue a passion. We set up shop in Traverse City. We purchased our first building, which is our distillery, and invested in 400-gallon Cote. It's a German still. It's a pot column combo. We opened our doors and started distilling in 2015, January 2015, and have been just cranking out product there ever since.
At what point did you guys realize it was time to quit your jobs? I feel like a lot of people really struggle with having that duality of finding your passion and then like balancing it with like reality,
In our world, we just couldn't take it any longer. We were trying to, moonlight making this project happen. And we were eventually we were too stressed out and trying to manage too much. Our families were getting, angry at the late hours and weekends and, going from 40 to 50 to 70 to 80 to 100-hour work weeks. It just wasn't sustainable. And ironically, that's kind of what we're doing now, but it's for a cause that we believe in. It's not this duality idea.
Of course. Yeah. And I think you obviously made the right call. And I feel like a lot of people really do overlook the fact that when you do start your business, you're putting in more hours than you would pretty much anywhere else. In terms of like corporate jobs, we've experienced that firsthand.
Yeah. I mean, you're building a foundation, and
for sure,
the strength of your business is only as strong as that foundation. So there's no question that you really have to put in more hours, double the hours that you anticipate, especially at the beginning.
Absolutely. Well, Joey and I have ourselves a glass of the straight bourbon whiskey from Traverse City, and we're gonna sample that right now. This is the first of 4 products that we're trying on the show today. Okay, that's solid.
The straight bourbon is very smooth.
Okay,
we're drinking it neat right now as well.
I would classify this as like how Starbucks is known for like their strong taste in coffee. If you like bourbon, I feel like this is the go-to because there's a very distinct flavor profile that it makes itself very known that it is bourbon and it's here to be here. But very strong. I like it.
Yeah, and the straight bourbon is bottled at 43% ABV, and the price point on the bottle is right around $30. It kind of depends on what state you're in. We actually just started selling in Ohio as well.
Nice.
But it's intended to be very approachable from both a proof and cost standpoint.
So I see on the bottle it says aged for 3 years or more. So how do you go about figuring out how long you need to age each specific product?
Right now, the sample that you guys are drinking has a 3-year age statement, which means the lowest age bourbon in the bottle is 3 years. It actually has a weighted average of probably 3.5 to 4 years. Now, south of Michigan, every bottle that we're selling has a 4-year age statement. But we were making some cherry whiskey yesterday, and we opened up a barrel and tasted it and kind of went around. We did a round table with production, and everybody shook their head no and just said the whiskey's not ready. It's like when you know, and we have a very concrete and methodical sampling process before we put a barrel into a batch.
Cool. What does that round table look like, and what is the process for like that quality assurance, making sure that all products that go out the door are at that highest quality?
Yep. So the round table, there's 4 of us that will make the decision. We have 2 guys that are responsible for barrel harvesting. The first part of their job is sampling, and if the samples are good, they bless it. They're looking for flavor, color, aroma, and just these consistent qualities that we know will blend out a batch, a quality batch. And from there, if we do have a barrel like we had yesterday, these guys that are responsible for identifying these 4 components will bring it to us, and they'll say, I don't think this barrel's ready. The age is there, but it just tastes young. And so we put an unhappy face and a date on the barrel bung and revisit it every 3 to 6 months.
So after you guys test that barrel and you close it back off, is it an easy process to just reclose it, or is there like specific steps you have to take?
Yeah, it's very easy. We have we pull bungs out of barrels regularly. I mean, probably almost a dozen a day at this point. And it's easy as just taking a mallet and hammering in a replacement bung.
Oh, there you go. While we're on the topic, I'm going to pour myself a sample of the cherry infused whiskey. So
Very cool.
there it goes. Yeah. But why do you think Traverse City, Michigan is a great home for a distillery? Because usually, you think of bourbon, you think of whiskey, you think more, Kentucky area, right?
Yeah. That's actually a really important part of our culture and our MO as a company and as a brand. Our trademark moniker is the Whiskey of the North. And what the Whiskey of the North means is that we endure a much harsher climate in a more heavily swung climate than an area like Kentucky, right? So our exposure to the four seasons, that constant fluctuation of temperature, it leads to much more aggressive expansion and contraction with the whiskey in the barrel. So the barrel itself will mature faster with more character, with more fluctuations in temperature. And it just so happens that we have high highs and low lows. And because Michigan and the Midwest have 4 very well-defined seasons, it's the perfect opportunity for that barrel to mature in a very positive way.
That's really interesting. I've never heard that perspective of like the seasons really affecting the product that gets put out. So why is that? Why, like, what is about the cold that makes the barrel different?
Yep. So this is kind of going down a rabbit hole, but let's dip our toe in. So our barrel warehouse is not climate controlled. Right now we're storing about 1,000 barrels on site. I think right now we're far enough into winter where we have a wall of ice buildup on the furthest wall that is exposed to the outside. So as the temperature heats up, the whiskey moves into the wood. And as the temperature cools down, the whiskey extracts from the wood. That's why, have you guys seen the Jack Daniel's, they call it the devil's cut? Have you heard of that before?
Yeah.
Again, not to go down too far down the rabbit hole, but when you have every year you have evaporation from the barrel. Alcohol or water evaporates. So if you start with a 53-gallon barrel, every year you lose between 3 and 5%. Mm-hmm. That is the angel's share.
Yep. I've also heard it referred to as the angel's tax.
Yes, exactly.
Yep.
And the whiskey that gets lodged in the oak wood, they call the devil's cut. So angel and devil, right? And the more of that temperature fluctuation with cold to hot, hot to cold, the more times that whiskey is going to pass in and out of the wood. And the wood is where it gets its character.
For sure. Okay. That's new to me. That actually explains a lot.
Yep.
So you guys started really getting going in 2015. At what point did you guys start to expand your product line?
We started selling an aged whiskey back in 2012. We started expanding it was a sourced whiskey from a distillery in Indiana called MGP. Traverse City, cherry capital of the world. It's the cherry industry is ripe up here. And it was in 2013 that we thought, cherry capital of the world, we really need to launch a cherry whiskey. I'll tell you, the market wasn't ready for it, but we decided just to everything. Typically our innovation pipeline is just about having fun. And we're not going to really worry about at the beginning whether something like the cherry whiskey is going to sell really well or not. It's more about just, doing what we enjoy and having fun. And this significant agricultural heritage, both with my family and the city, the cherry whiskey just made sense. And it's just taking the bourbon that we started with and infusing cherries. We created this product back in 2013, and it was relatively stagnant for a couple of years. And then once the market started, gravitating more toward it and realizing that it's really, it's not built specifically for the enthusiast. the cherry whiskey is built as a kind of a gateway for folks that are trying to learn whiskey, but they don't want a super high proof whiskey, right? Mm. Yeah, the cherry whiskey is bottled at 70 proof. It's a little bit lower proof. It was our first natural extension. 2013 was when that process started, creating new recipes or new formulas and releasing different expressions to the market.
Absolutely. Yeah. It sounds like you guys were a bit ahead of the game, because now, I mean, you have like Crown Apple, you have vanilla flavored whiskeys. Obviously cherry is a staple now, I feel like, with any sort of flavor that goes into whiskey. Yeah. It's just crazy to think about. That was only 7 years ago.
Yeah. And now the whiskey that we're sipping on right now, the cherry whiskey, is the best selling craft spirit in the state of Michigan. So It's very interesting how times have changed, going from, we had trouble moving bottles, and all of a sudden we can't keep it off the shelf.
Yeah, I actually put up your whiskey on my story on Instagram, and one of my friends told me that him and his dad get the Traverse City whiskey all the time.
There you go. No other way to do it. But I do see what you mean, as this could be more for like the casual instead of like a straight bourbon enthusiast, because like you said, it is lower proof, and also it does have like a little bit more flair to it, being that there's also a cherry accompanying it. Yep. And I'm trying it right now. I mean, I think it's phenomenal. Obviously, like we clarified earlier, we're more on like the casual side than hardcore enthusiasts. All the products that we've tried so far are great, but I could definitely see myself taking this over to like a party, bonfire, whatever, and then everyone there'd be no complaints really. I mean, this is just like an ultimate crowd pleaser in my eyes.
Agreed.
Yep.
Yeah, that's a really great narrative of how it would be used. That was exactly how it was designed.
So, Chris, when you're drinking these different whiskeys and you're trying them out, what do you usually drink them neat, or do you make an old fashioned, or how do you prefer to drink them?
Yeah, so I love a good old fashioned. And typically I bounce, if I'm going to do a cocktail, I bounce between the bourbon, the cherry whiskey, and then the rye whiskey. And, it really just depends on the mood, depends on the day. I'll bounce between neat, maybe on the rocks, but a good cocktail at the end of the week is certainly a regular approach for me.
Absolutely. I would say more often than not, if we're going out, I mean, it's got to be an old fashioned, right? Like I'd say that's my go-to, no doubt. Well, the cherry was phenomenal. And next one we're going to dive into here. What is this? The North Coast Rye. Okay. I'm excited now.
Yeah, I'm excited for this one. So
Yes,
Chris,
sir.
what was the inspiration behind the North Coast Rye?
The inspiration behind the North Coast Rye. So there were many rye whiskeys that hit the market at about the same time. And we were really trying to find a differentiator, something that would make the rye whiskey unique. And typically any rye whiskey you'll sample will either probably be, it'll be either spicier or more buttery. And so we wanted to play right in the middle between those two. And that was the inspiration for the North Coast Rye. It's a blend of two recipes. One is a 95% rye, 5% malted barley. And the other is a 100% rye. The 95% rye is certainly more spicy. 100% rye is more buttery. And the combination of two, they just play so well together. When you've got a million options that really sway one way or the other, we were just trying to find that harmonious middle ground.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm looking at the bottle right now, 45% and so 90 proof. And is this the only rye that you guys have right now on your selection?
We also make a barrel proof version of this. Okay. So instead of 45%, it's closer to 55 or 60%, depending on the batch.
Okay, very cool. All right, I'm about to take my first sip here. Let's see.
Yep, same.
Yep, I will join you.
That's it right there for me.
Yeah.
I think this is my favorite so far. I'm a big fan.
Yeah, a little bit higher proof than the bourbon and the cherry.
Unbelievably smooth.
Yeah, we were just talking about old fashions, and this is typically my go-to for that recipe. It's 2 ounces of the North Coast Rye, 4 dashes of bitters, probably about a quarter to a half ounce of simple syrup, and the orange expression. Yeah, I'm a huge fan of that cocktail.
Absolutely.
Frankie said it's his favorite. I'm having a hard time deciding between all of them, actually. So it's a tough choice. This one is phenomenal, though.
We also did sneak in one of the premier cocktail cherries as well. Yeah. I forgot to mention that earlier. That was another product that we were able to sample. I mean, what can you say? Like, that is the thickest syrup that I've ever seen with a cocktail cherry.
So good.
Phenomenal. I mean, really no other words to say there.
So how did you guys come about to making the cherries? Is it just being in the Traverse City area?
Funny story with the cocktail cherries. We opened our distillery, which includes our tasting room up in Traverse City. It's you can buy bottles, sample the product, and also grab a cocktail. And in 2015, we were spending an exorbitant amount of money on garnishes, but predominantly cocktail cherries from Italy. And we were like, what are we doing? I think it may have been my father that called me out. He said, why are you paying for Italian cherries? This is the cherry capital of the world. So we immediately went into R&D mode. The cocktail cherries were born. It was a simple, we couldn't in good faith be sourcing, internationally for a garnish. So we just made it.
Absolutely. I mean, that makes sense, right? And cherry capital of the world. And then you produce some of the best garnishes that I've ever had with an accompanying drink. What is the secret sauce there? Like I said earlier, this is like the thickest like syrup or like sauce that comes with cherries. Like, what's the process for this?
It's just the secret is that it's made with love. That's
okay.
That's all I can know.
TLC. I mean, that's all you need to know.
Yeah.
So what would you say is your favorite part about operating a distillery?
It's my favorite part about this venture is that, one, we have a kick-ass team. We've surrounded ourselves with amazing people, and it genuinely makes waking up in the morning and crushing a 12-hour day not just tolerable, but fun. It's, I hate to dig into an old adage, but if you love what you do, you don't work a day in your life. And we've invested so much into our company culture and training and making sure that everybody's on the same page. We tailgate as a 20-person team 3 times a day so that everybody's on the same page. We're all pursuing the same goal and the same mission. And we have a set of principles that we abide by. And if somebody, it's not if somebody breaks rules. The way that we position it is if somebody doesn't believe what we believe, drink the TC Whiskey Kool-Aid, that's fine. It doesn't bother anybody here, but it just doesn't align with our philosophy, and it doesn't align with our core values and our mission. The team that we've grown has been just awesome. They crush, and they're ninjas, and they're just they make the workplace super, super fun.
And Chris, have you guys had a lot of the same team members since you first started?
Yeah, we've only had 1 or 2 people leave in the last 8 years.
Wow, that's impressive.
Our OGs go back as far as 8 years, and we hired our first employee in 2015. Our first 3 OGs are all still with us, so it's cool to see.
Yeah, you love to hear that. I mean, there's a crucial role that having a team, like, that's just inexpensible, right? It's because you can have a successful business, but if you want to have a business, like you said, where you go to work every day and you don't really feel like you're working a day in your life, it really is the team and the culture that you've built. Throughout your process, what was it looking like for expanding your team? Like, where were your strengths at? And then where did you come up with the necessary employment?
Every time the weight gets too heavy. So I was our first bottling team. And then eventually my business partner had to help. And eventually we called in some buddies to ask for help. And then they stopped returning our calls because we kept saying, hey, do you guys mind coming to help us bottle? And they're like, why don't you hire somebody? And we were like, that's a great idea. So yeah, we hired our first production manager. And then it's just every time that the weight gets too heavy, we determine as a team, what that new role will look like. And then just we're pretty picky, I'd say, about what types of candidate or candidates will walk through the door. Yeah, it's just every time that we see that area for improvement or we fall short, we're big on metrics, so we keep tabs on how we're doing on in every business unit. If we have enough, call them like negative check boxes over the course of a few months, it's a red flag, and then we go to work bringing on the best or smartest or personalities that we can find.
That's something that I feel like every small business goes through, is like the growing pains or like the new unknown of hiring. I just love that you have to pick people that you align yourselves with and that they align with the company goals. I think that's great.
Yep.
So a little off topic of what we're talking about now, but I was just kind of looking at all these different whiskeys, and they all have a distinct color. So how does the color play into the flavor, and how do the individual whiskeys get their color?
Fun fact, and a lot of people don't know this, when the whiskey enters the barrel, it enters the barrel looking like vodka, stock, clear vodka. And it actually, vodka by design is intended to be flavorless. There's always these subtle nuances, but vodka is made by just stripping alcohol, and eventually getting something that's palatable and doesn't taste like anything, so that it can be a versatile spirit. Whiskey, on the other hand, is under distilled. So distilling just strips out flavor. With whiskey, you want flavor. That's kind of the point, right? So when the whiskey comes off the still and it gets put into the barrel, it goes in clear, and after even 3 to 5 days, it begins taking on color from the char on the inside of the barrel. So again, not to go down the rabbit hole, but the way that a barrel is made is it's a bourbon barrel or a whiskey barrel is made with oak whiskey. Similar to a wine barrel, it's the inside of the barrel is set on fire before it's done its process. The amount of time that the inside of the barrel is exposed to flame determines its char number. So the higher the number, whether it's 2, 3, or 4, is determined by the amount of time that it's been hit with the torch. The heavier the char, the more color you get faster. So over the course of, say, 5 years, with a heavier char, you're going to get a deeper color because of the charcoal and the charred wood. Fast forward another 15 years, at age 20, you're going to have a very, very deep amber hue, and the color will be much more prominent because it just had that much more time to be exposed to the oak wood.
Did not know that, because like Joey said, looking at the different bottles, you can see there's a clear difference in the transparency in which the liquor is being able to see through. Very cool.
And I was noticing that the barrel proof one was the darkest and had that deep amber color as well.
Yes, so that's a good point. Of course, the cherry is an oddball because we steep cherries into the whiskey and it takes on some of that red character from the fruit. But with the barrel proof, the higher proof means that it's been diluted with less water, making it darker. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
Yep. So it should, by nature, be darker.
Cool. Well,
while we're on the topic, this is the last one we have to try, the barrel proof. So we'll get to it.
So, Chris, you probably have a lot of experiences here. Day in, day out. You gotta sample your product. What would you say is your hangover recipe, or what steps do you take to make sure that you're feeling great the next day?
I'm a huge advocate of the water spacer.
Okay.
It's very water is your friend. And so, funny story. So years ago, I thought through this picture in my head of how your body metabolizes alcohol. We have this instrument called a hydrometer. It's a hydrometer. And what it does is measure the alcohol content, or rather the water in the alcohol content. So you know what proof your batch or your whiskey is, right? So I always imagine my stomach like a hydrometer. If you put full proof whiskey in a hydrometer, or rather in a graduated cylinder, the same idea as drinking a cup of whiskey. And by adding water, you're diluting it and the hydrometer reacts to it. So I always tell myself that if I'm going to drink a high proof whiskey, I'm going to drink a water with it. And therefore the hydrometer will react and my body will be processing a lower proof alcohol. Hangover cure, the hearty breakfast, cheesy eggs with sausage and bacon. Can't get enough.
I mean, that sounds about right to me. I mean, I've never heard it in terms of thinking of like your stomach and the way in which you metabolize and having like that balance between water and alcohol. Obviously, you're told, make sure you drink a cup of water before you go to bed. But you do this like throughout the day, right? So if you have like one sample or like one drink, you're also having that water there at the same time.
Yes. And, it's one thing, it's very common in the industry to just kind of get carried away and, it's a laugh here and there. But, when we go to trade shows and we have to be pros with conversation and the business and be, respectful and intelligent to the business, that water spacer is like your best friend. It keeps you straight, keeps you fresh. It's great for your skin. It's so much better for your body. Mm-hmm. And it's so necessary.
No, I mean, that makes complete sense. Can you give us a quick rundown on what that looks like when you go to like an expo or you're presenting a new product for the first time? What does that look like from your side as a distributor?
Really, it's about telling the story.
Okay.
Why Traverse City? Why Traverse City Whiskey? Who are you? What do you do? Frankly, it's like this, our moniker, the Whiskey of the North, that's our story. That's like what makes us special. Our company special. It's what makes our company unique. It's why, we're not just another Tennessee or Kentucky distillery. And so a trade show or an expo it's like our opportunity to have that conversation and develop, meaningful relationships.
Absolutely. I mean, that makes sense. And I mean, like you said, the fact that you're brewing, or you're not brewing, but you're distilling whiskey in a place that's pretty uncommon. That in itself, I feel like just sets you apart. And then obviously the fact that you're able to provide, the great backstory along with the alcohols that you're sampling, it makes perfect sense to me. And going off of that, have you ever thought about venturing into something other than whiskey?
I'd say I've thought about it.
Okay.
But it's my two partners and I, all of our eggs are in this basket. And for the time being, anything that we do outside of this is a distraction from our team's goal. And right now in 3 months, we're about to break ground on the largest family-owned distillery north of Kentucky. To be fair to the business, for the time being, before we have the wheels turning at the distillery, it's really just going to be zeroed. All of the attention's going to be zeroed on TC whiskey.
Makes sense. I love it. I actually just thought about this while you were talking. Obviously with COVID, there's been a lot of restaurants, a lot of bars that have closed down. But something that I've seen is a lot of liquor sales in like Costco, Walmart, places in which you can see, people that are buying in mass volumes. How has that affected your business?
Yeah, people are drinking right now. It's
right. Yeah.
It's weird times. It's, between just, traditional spirits, which are up like crazy this year, except, not obviously bars and restaurants, but retailers are just on fire. And we've done everything we can just to keep up with that trend. And we were far enough ahead back in March to shut down our whiskey operation and make hand sanitizer for probably 2 months. Over the course of 2 months, we sold something like 20,000 gallons of sanitizer and shipped care packages to over 10,000 people around the country that didn't have access to sanitizer, which was so cool. We received so much love for being able to just stop normal business and divert to that, because it just like the need was there and we had the capacity, and just, yeah, it was a lot of fun. It was crazy. It was unbelievable, but it was fun.
That's crazy. I mean, we've seen it here too. I mean, Toledo Spirits is one that comes to mind for like a local distillery, but they were able to shift their focus, like you said, and then start producing hand sanitizer. I think, I mean, if anything, that's a testament to how well run your business is, that you're able to make decisions like that. And then also just, I mean, a great impact on the world in general.
Yeah, absolutely.
So like hand sanitizer, right? Like how much of a process is that compared to what you do day to day? Was there like a big learning curve there, or like, yeah, just give me a quick rundown on that.
Yeah, it's very, very similar to what we do on a daily basis from a bottling standpoint. You're taking 4 ingredients, blending them together and bottling it. And we had some excess glass or some excess packaging that we were able to put the sanitizer in. And thankfully, at the beginning of the pandemic, the World Health Organization and the CDC released a formula that distilleries like ours could use, and so that we could safely make this product. And, with the help of the CDC, guiding us on how to do that, combining, it was combining vodka and hydrogen peroxide and a denaturant so that you couldn't drink it, and putting them all together and putting it in a bottle and shipping the bottle.
That's interesting.
Yeah, I've never heard it from your perspective. Obviously you see like, oh, distillery is now producing hand sanitizer, like make sure to buy some or whatever, but it's very interesting. Yeah. I just never thought of it from that side until just now.
And to hear the process behind it.
Yeah, for sure. That's awesome.
So Thanksgiving was about a month ago. Christmas is coming up here in about a week. How do holidays affect your business?
October, November, December are just wild. We've been on overdrive, on overtime. It's honestly, it's pretty stressful because it's when retailers are maxing out their needs for the year. So for the past 2 months, we've been going nuts. We've got 20 people under a 12,000 square foot roof, and it's just a game of coordination. And we're honestly, personally, on a personal and professional level, I cannot wait for the first week of January.
We still have yet to try the bourbon proof Traverse City whiskey.
Yep, barrel proof bourbon, right?
Yep. Barrel proof bourbon. It is at 58.3%. This looks like it's handwritten here. I don't know if that's by design or if somebody actually wrote that. But yes,
every bottle is handwritten, and every batch is unique. Has a unique proof.
So how do you go about getting like each bottle? Does that take a lot of time to actually handwrite and test each proof in the bottle?
It takes so long.
It's a little more intense than some of the other ones we've had.
Yeah.
Overall, though, great flavor.
Yeah. So the difference between the first expression that we tried and this is really just a little bit of age and water. So if you added a specific amount of water to this, you would convert it into the XXX straight bourbon.
Right. No, I mean, that makes sense. That'd be blasphemy if anyone ever did that, but yes.
It would be blasphemy. I agree.
So how would you drink this? A pretty high proof and very distinct drink. Is this something that you put in a cocktail? Is this something you drink neat on the rocks?
This is something that I would drink neat as a nightcap.
Okay.
Yeah, I wouldn't go out and ask for, unless I was trying it for the first time. Anything you try for the first time, at least in my world, you want to drink neat, because anything like ice or cocktail ingredients will just disrupt the character of the spirit. But if I've had it a few times, I'm probably just going to have something like this as a digestif or an after dinner drink, and sip it slowly and really, enjoy and appreciate the character.
Gotcha. No, I mean, that makes complete sense though. Is like, if you're going to go try something for the first time, you don't want it to be infused with other drinks, other spirits, mixers. Yep. Exactly. For what it is. Yeah. Oh,
yep.
It's also like in New York, you get a regular pie the first time you go to any shop, and regular pie, just cheese, sauce, and dough. and nothing, new toppings, nothing else. That's how you got to do it.
Yep.
So what would you say that what would you say is the worst part about operating a distillery? I was going to take a guess there and say it's handwriting on every bottle. But,
that's fair.
But I mean, it seems like you love what you do. But if you had to pick, one thing that you didn't love as much, what would it be?
Yeah, the one thing that I strongly dislike about the industry is the compliance. It is a hyper-regulated industry, which is why it's very few folks start distilleries, is because it's a pain in the ass. It's hard to keep up from every compliance standpoint, because rules, every state is different. Federal is federal, but on the state level, everybody plays by a slightly different set of rules, and it's typically not in favor of the distiller. Craft beer and craft wine they have a strong lobbying presence at the federal level, and doing business. And that's why there's a zillion craft breweries or craft wineries, because it's much easier to conduct business. But only recently have craft distilleries begun the process of being treated like the small guy and not the big guy. In our world, there's big and small, and we're treated like Jack Daniels, Jim Beam, and it's not super fun.
Yeah, I mean, it seems unrealistic, if anything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I actually talked to Aaron about this. Aaron Bross, shout out. Great guy, great communicator, and obviously he hooked us up today. But I was asking him, I was picking his brain for a minute when we were on the phone, and I was asking him if he knew or if he had seen any trends with having cherry infused whiskey and expanding the whiskey profile. Was that in conjunction with the IPA market and innovating whiskey alongside innovating craft beer?
Yeah, the timing was very, very similar.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, that's an interesting observation. I'd never thought about that.
Yeah, I mean, because we talked to people from all over the U.S., and that was just something that I had started to pick up on, was how passionate people are about craft beer, and rightfully so. I mean, it's an art form at the end of the day, but also the innovation that came along with distilling just seemed to be at that same coincidental time when craft brewing really exploded.
Yeah, yep, I definitely agree, and that's a great observation.
Yeah, thank you. So you had mentioned that distilling, it's pretty hard. Obviously, as a smaller distiller, you're treated as if you should have the expectations of a big guy or a big player in the space. What would you recommend to anybody that is starting out in this process?
Ask for help.
Okay.
That is the one thing that has saved us so many times, even from day one. When you make whiskey, you can't mess it up. You can't make it today and then 3, 4, 5, 10 years later you open the barrel and it's garbage. That's the worst business decision to make in the whiskey distillery world, is to not ask for help, because you can't. If you're newer in the business, mm-hmm. the crapshoot of is this going to work or not realized after that test of time. Whereas with beer, you can make it today and sell it tomorrow or sell it in a couple days. Mm-hmm. In our world, it's simply not the case.
So kind of going off of that, Chris, do you guys have any issues with that starting off and opening up your first barrel a few years later?
No, we asked for help, and we were guided by people that have done this and failed many times and are honest and open and transparent about what that process looks like. And it's save the day.
For sure. How much forethought goes into this? So, Traverse City Whiskey, 2012, what were you guys thinking when you're all right, we want to have great products 3 to 5 years from now? What is the mindset that you need to have there?
Honestly, it's just, it's agility. Okay. And, we, like I mentioned earlier, we are a little bit less intentional with our development process. We do with what's fun for us at the time, like the cherry whiskey. Mm-hmm. And the market tells us, says this is something that we like, or you guys are on the wrong path. Our best reactor is just the customer. It's the person that, may not always work out. We're not gonna bat 1,000. It's like really gonna be a learning process.
Yeah, you're only batting 900. No, it was just crazy though. Like Joey had some social proof earlier, just the fact that, he's from Ann Arbor area and he puts a snap up and within, what was it 15 minutes?
If even that, 5 to 10.
Yeah, exactly. Someone recognizes the brand and they love it and they're able to, corroborate the story that is Traverse City Whiskey Co. So that's awesome.
And kind of going off location, how hard is it to expand your market to different states with all the different regulations in each individual state?
Especially now.
Yeah,
it's actually very difficult it's actually not difficult to enter a market. It's difficult to stay in a market. So you can, if you're ambitious enough, you can usually find a route into a new market, which for us is just a new state. The problem is if you enter a state and your product doesn't move, you're going to get booted. So you have to have a driving force behind either your trajectory of sales or your innovation pipeline. You have to continue to stay relevant in a world that's dominated by, Jim and Jack. And, we don't have top-down marketing dollars. We don't have these huge expense accounts to go to build the brand in that way. Whereas our competitors are spending hundreds of millions of dollars on those activities. Mm-hmm. So it's really just being very clever with packaging and creating a good product and, leveraging our distributor sales team to say, guys, hey, don't forget about us. We're still relevant. And we meet with them, their sales teams twice a year, and half the time, half the staff is new. So they've never heard our story. They've never heard who we are and what we do and why the whiskey of the North is a thing.
Gotcha.
And kind of going off of that, our designer was looking at your brand and he loved the font you used in the packaging as well. So.
Yeah. Thank you.
Did you guys come up with that all in-house, or did you have somebody help you at the beginning, or how did that all go out?
Yeah, we partnered with we have a creative director who's actually based in Utah. Doesn't drink, never even had the whiskey, but he gets the brand. He's been to Traverse City several times, and we've worked with him since day one, and he helped us select each of the branding elements like the font.
Awesome. Yeah, that makes sense. We come from a software background. So, so like the supply chain in which like physical goods are distributed, we're not as well informed with that. We, like Joey said, we work with a team of designers, project management, developers. So it's a little bit different. And that's kind of why I love, the show in general, is we get exposed to this side of it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Very cool.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I'm gonna go another lap here. I'm gonna call it a victory lap. What was your favorite, Joey? I'm gonna go back to the North Coast Rye.
I'm gonna have to be right there with you.
Really?
To be honest, yeah.
Right,
the North Coast Rye, it just something about it just makes me want to have another glass. I don't know. I don't know with my words how I can explain why, but it just has a lot of flavor and it's very smooth overall.
Yep. I would say that's it. Like up front, what you're getting, and it's high quality. It's great, but on the back end, you do get like a smooth, buttery feeling, and it's pleasant to go down at the end of the day.
Agreed.
Cool. Thanks for that, guys.
Yeah, for sure. Like we said, we're not connoisseurs. We're not expert enthusiasts in any realm of the imagination. But what you're hearing here, this is our true, honest opinion. So.
Yeah, the bulk of my whiskey and bourbon experience was my dad's pretty into, like, if he goes to a bar, he's getting whiskey or bourbon on the rocks every single time.
Yep.
So at my house, he always had a lot of his go-to was always the Bullet Rye, which could be one of the reasons why I like the North Coast Rye, because it kind of reminds me of that. But so that was a big bulk of my experience with whiskey and bourbon.
Yeah, right on.
I would just say this is probably one of my favorite questions to ask any of the guests, and it is, if you weren't doing what you're currently doing, where could you see yourself in, an employment position?
That is a great question. I have not paid mind to that in almost a decade.
I mean, that's great to hear, honestly. I mean, you're doing what you love. But hypothetically, if you did have to step out of your realm of distilling, what would it be?
Yeah, I was a part of the corporate grind for almost a decade. And however, I was raised by a cherry farmer who, in that nature, was an entrepreneur. And so the only thing that I knew growing up is that I wanted to work for myself. Going from tech consulting to, the entrepreneur world, it's hard to say where I would dabble, but it would be on a project like this. Maybe not in the whiskey world, but certainly something that allowed for daily enthusiasm.
Yeah, I mean, I can only speak for myself here, but I would consider myself and you, Joey, like entrepreneurs. I mean, starting your own business in your 20s, and growing it to where you can be financially, not like financially set, in which you can do what you love and you can still pay your bills. And it's covering that realm of passion versus like reality, that very few people get to tread that line of being your own boss and doing what you love, really.
100%. Kind of going off of that, Frankie, it's being an entrepreneur. It's like you do have to work those. Our first, 3 to 6 months, we were at 12 to 16 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Yeah.
But I mean, now we're about a year and a half, 2 years in, and it's like we still have plenty of 12 to 16 hour days. But if there's a day we need to take off or a few hours we need to take off here or there, you have the independence to do that. And that's one of my favorite things. It's like you with a corporate job, it's like, I worked at FCA Jeep for a while, and it's like you wake up at 7 a.m., you get done at 6 p.m., and then rinse and repeat for your whole life. And where as an entrepreneur, you kind of get the freedom to almost make your own schedule, even though you are working more hours than most people.
Right.
Yeah. Right. The flexibility, and then also the team aspect that you had touched on earlier, like crafting the team that you and candidates, you can see yourselves working as a cohesive unit for a goal that you're both passionate about, and expanding that team. I love that side of it. And then also too, maybe it's your cousin's birthday up in Michigan, right? Like having that flexibility to just say, okay, I'm only gonna work 4 or 5 hours today, but then tomorrow I'm putting in 17. And just being able to have that control of your life is pretty unprecedented in the world we live in now, which is pretty operated by corporate America, big businesses employing most of the population. Sorry, that was a little bit of a tangent there.
Oh, that's great.
We feel very passionate on the subject, and when you say entrepreneur, like we just kind of got going there. Not gonna lie.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what would you recommend to anybody that's starting out as an entrepreneur, and any life lessons along the way that you've learned?
The advice that I would give is really focus on what I always call the V1. So if you look at the first version of our package, it looks a lot different than the bottle that you guys are sipping out of right now. There's a lot of mistakes we made off the bat, but it was how we entered the market, and it allowed us to hear feedback. It allowed us to have those conversations, and we evolved, and we listened. And I think a lot of folks get hung up on launching the perfect version of whatever it is they're doing. But my advice is to bite the bullet, and instead of going 100%, maybe go 80% and do good, do really good, but don't try to be perfect, because that could delay your launch by months or years. And during that time, that's valuable time that you could be listening and evolving. And perfection, is just it's not a thing in business. And it's great to want to achieve to be, the best version of, yourself, or whatever that looks like for your product. But don't be shy. Ask good questions and use your ears.
Right on. They say perfection gets in the way of greatness. So I 100% believe that. We're big proponents of iteration. Hearing that feedback, knowing what works, and then tweaking from there, because it's just so hard if you went 100% on something and then you had to restart or shift directions in a way that was, unknowns to you. So I 100% agree.
Yep.
Well, winding down the show here, we got a couple of fun off-topic questions. My first one being, first off, where are you from? Traverse City, right?
I'm from Traverse City. Yep.
Okay. And if anybody is to visit, what would you say is your favorite hometown restaurant?
This it's a restaurant called The Cook's House. It is small and the food is delightful. It's just wonderful. Their staff is crazy into the details, and it's not cheap, but it's also, it doesn't break the bank. It's a great end-to-end experience, and it's right downtown Traverse City.
Nice.
Awesome. And then how about if you're not drinking Traverse City Whiskey Co. with, some friends or at home, what bars would you recommend in town as well?
In town, I would recommend checking out 2 different establishments. One is the Parlor. Their cocktail game is strong, and if you're really into diving into and finding whiskeys from around the world, check out Low Bar.
Low Bar. Okay.
And then, of course, after you stop at TC Whiskey.
Of course.
Absolutely. That actually brings me to another point. So just for clarification, you guys do have the TC Outpost, correct?
We do, yeah. Down in Detroit, it's our first satellite tasting room.
Cool. Okay, that's awesome. Because I wasn't sure, and I saw it on your website, and obviously being from Detroit, I mean, at this point, I feel obligated to go. I mean, I feel bad that I haven't visited yet, but that's cool. So TC Outpost, it carries all of your products, right? I'd assume.
Oh yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, Joey, gotta stop by now.
Of course, we will next time we're in Detroit.
That's what I'm saying. Well, I'm gonna be there in 6 days. So
perfect. You can try it out then.
That's what I'm saying.
Don't be a stranger.
Yes, sir.
So, Chris, what's the most thrill-seeking thing you've done? It can either be in business or, anything, other adventures along the way.
The most thrill-seeking, it is cliche. It's wildly cliche. But jumping off an airplane was a heck of an adrenaline rush.
I love when people say that, because that's always my go-to. When you skydiving, it's hard to beat. I mean, I've done a decent amount of thrill-seeking events in my lifetime, but jumping out of the airplane for the first time and looking down, and, I was about 40 minutes away from Cleveland. I could see it clear as day.
Yeah,
it's hard to beat the adrenaline rush and the fun you get from doing that for the first time.
Yeah, heck yeah, so much fun.
How many times have you gone, Chris?
I've gone twice, and I would gladly, if you guys come up to Traverse City and you want to go skydiving, give me a bite. We'll jump out of a plane.
Hey, perfect. Where did you go when you went skydiving? What place?
I did both dives in outside of Chicago. Yep. So cool to see the Chicago skyline, and so with a couple of buddies doing birthday trips, and it was just a fun overall, completely breathtaking experience.
Yep. That's awesome. I went for actually my high school graduation about 5 years ago.
Oh, sweet.
And it was insane, because actually at the time I hadn't traveled much, at least that I have remembered, from the time I was we traveled a lot when I was younger, but the first time I actually jumped out of an airplane was the first time I remember being in an airplane. So people call me crazy for that, but I'm like, hey, you got to do it,
Absolutely. That's so funny.
Jesus. Yeah, y'all are crazy, man.
Frankie, he kind of like to stay on the
safe side.
The safe side, yeah.
Put it that way.
That's the word I was looking for.
Do you have any experiences with paranormal activity? Any ghost stories? Anything like that?
I don't. I don't think I have a single ghost story. We have, at the Cherry Farm, our family has a century-old farmhouse that creaks and rattles a lot. And growing up, my sister and I were deathly scared of those nooks and crannies and the creaks. And we had this back storage room that we casually referred to as the dead body room, because it was so weird and creepy and scary for us when we were 5 or 10 years old. And I think that really toughened me up. And since then, I think I just avoided the whole ghost and paranormal scene.
Chris and I resonate with you a lot there, because my family actually owns a farm as well. And we built it around 1927. And I used to go to my grandma's house a lot when I was younger. And it seemed like upstairs was about 40 degrees colder And when I laid in the guest bedroom, and it just seemed something was off sometimes. It was just a little scary being up there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, Chris, do you have any questions for us?
No, I think we did some work. We covered a good hour here.
Yes, sir. Yeah,
I agree.
That's always the struggle, right? Is how do you condense as much of one person's story into an hour? But we went over a little bit today. We're at 110 on the recording, but nothing wrong with that.
I think this was phenomenal.
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah, it was a great conversation. It's always fun to chat with people like yourself that are I think the one thing that I resonate toward the most with people generally is people that are interested. I would identify myself as an interest, not an interesting, certainly not an interesting, but an interested person. And I applaud you guys for doing this podcast and reaching out to folks like myself and pursuing that dream, because that's so cool.
Thank you so much, Chris. We appreciate that a lot. And that kind of reminds me of How to Win Friends and Influence People, the book. I don't know if you've gotten a chance to read it, but, just talk about being an interested person and being interested in what, people have to say. And it can go a long way. Absolutely.
Couldn't agree more.
Well, Chris Fredrickson from Traverse City Whiskey Co., Traverse City, Michigan. Make sure to check him out. Where can we find you on socials, website, anything you want to plug?
Yeah, check us out at TC Whiskey on Instagram or Facebook, facebook.com/TC Whiskey. We tell our story. We spend a lot of time and invest a lot of energy in telling the Traverse City Whiskey story, and that's the best place to find us.
Awesome. Chris, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much, man.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, After Hours Nation, we hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you'd like to stay updated, you can check out our site at afterhourscast.com. Don't forget to tune in next Tuesday morning for our next episode. After Hours Nation, stay thirsty, my friends.